What is the key to success? Is it having all the money you want? Is it balancing your home life with your family life, with your work life? Is it getting everything that you desire? Well, today we're going to talk about what are the keys to success.
Welcome to Thriving Launch with Louise Congdon and Kamala Chambers, the show for heart-centered entrepreneurs who want it all.
5 days a week, we bring you different segments to inspire you to live a life of freedom. We interview the leading experts in the field of business, health, and love. Be sure to check out Training Tuesdays, where we give you a clear action plan to grow your own business. Maybe you can relate to this. When I was a full-time coach, keep repeating the same things to people over and over and over again, and it got to be kind of draining, and I wasn't really enjoying what I was doing anymore. So what I decided to do was record the things that I had to tell clients over and over and over again, and then I packaged those recordings together and sold them as an online course. If you're interested in creating and selling your own online course, head over to thrivinglaunch.com, and I have a free training for you on how to create and make passive income through your own online course.
Today's guest was a millionaire by the time he was 27 years old. He's a father. He's been invited to lunch by the likes of Jack Dorsey. He's run multiple successful businesses. And yet at the crux of who Dale Partridge is someone who seeks to find balance and tries to live a moral and healthy life where it's not just business and it's not just work, but it's a life based on balance and family and strong morals. Today we bring you Dale Partridge to talk about morality, success, and balance.
Hey, this is very exciting to have you here, Dale. Welcome to Thriving Launch. Are you ready to launch?
Super excited to chat with you guys today.
So Dale, you've created multiple businesses that are thriving. They're succeeding. You managed to shift your life from being broke, having a wife who was working as a dog groomer, and you were struggling making, maybe $20,000, $30,000 a year, doing subpar and not feeling very successful. And now your life has completely shifted. And one of the things that happens with a lot of people is their life shifts, their idea of success shifts as well. So I'm really excited to talk to you about what does success look like to you, and what does that even mean? What is success for you now?
Yeah, it's a long journey of kind of unearthing that process. As we graduate high school and get into our early 20s, and we have this kind of version of success that we've typically adopted from what we've seen in culture and media, and maybe those that we've looked up to. And I think as we get smacked in the face by reality, as we go through relationships, and as we look at certain people and go, gosh, I don't like that about you, and look at other people and go, I really admire that person, it really starts to form and shape what success really looks like. And I don't think that success is very relative. I think that there are different channels of success. But I think to have it all, if you will, and this has kind of been one of my aims and on my journey of success, is to have it all. Meaning that to have a really strong relationship with my wife and my family and my kids, to have a really strong spiritual life, that I'm a Christian guy, but just to make sure that that's a priority in my life, to make sure that I have a good reputation and that I protect that. And, in the day of the internet, where the internet never forget, whatever you say can be construed and pushed against you. So we got to be very careful to protect our names and our reputation. And then, my physical health, and on top of that, my finances. Those kind of things really make up my success. As you can tell, I don't talk about my business. My business is something that I do, and I think it's fairly successful as a channel. But for the most part, I don't want to become the wealthiest guy that nobody likes. I don't want to become the guy that got too busy making a living that I forgot to make a life. And, there's all these puns that I can just keep going with in terms of, I don't want to be the richest guy in the graveyard, right? That's the life that I want to stay away from. As I said to you, even just our pre-call, I said, I might not be the wealthiest guy that you ever meet, but my hope is that I'll become one of the most successful people you ever meet.
I love how you're defining success for us and reframing it, because we do talk a lot about thriving launchers. We sit here and we talk about how to further your business, how to take it to the next level, how to bring in more financial abundance. And you're talking about holistic abundance that comes through your relationships, through your passion, through your spirituality, and your finances.
And what I like about what we're doing right now, Kamala and Dale, what we're doing is it really fits the integrity of the show, because for a while, Thriving Launch was just about business and giving people hard lessons on, and by what I mean by hard lessons is very step-by-step on how to do something, how to succeed in business. And now we've shifted the show, and all of a sudden Dale shows up on my radar, and I'm thinking I want to shift the show because entrepreneurs are people. They have lives outside of their business, and it's too easy to get overly focused on the business. What do you do, Dale, to keep that balance? Because success for me, I saw this circle that I really loved, and it was like a tire, and it had rings. So there was a big circle, and there was rings that went up one ring and then the second ring and up until 10 levels. And then it was cut like a pie. One little slice is your family, another one is your finances, and you fill out whatever level you rate yourself at. So, maybe 10 with family, a 2 with finances, or a 10 with finances and a 2 in health. And then what the coach told us is, look, if this tire isn't as full as possible at every spectrum, then you have an uneven tire and you can't really move the car. How do you keep this balance going for yourself with everything that you're doing?
Yeah, so for one thing is my philosophy is if you just build the person, then they'll build the business, right? There's no shortage of quick tips. If you want to know how to do entrepreneurship, that's super easy. You can go read 8 books and you know exactly how to start a business. That's really easy knowledge. What's not easy is maturity. It's the ability to make good decisions. It's discernment. It's discipline. It's integrity. It's patience, right? It's all these kind of virtues, if you will. And so I'm constantly focusing on how do I, become more honest? How do I become more dependable? How do I become more vulnerable and loving and brave and courageous in certain things and risky? And just so there's so many of those kind of balances that I'm focusing on. And I noticed that as the more I focus on those things, the more successful my business becomes. And if you look behind typically every really thriving business, you typically have a really good leader. Sure, we hear about all the bad stories as well, but for me, I'm just not interested in being a guy who has lots of money in a really great company and just has 2 divorces under his belt. There's a lot to be said that is, if a man can't or a woman can't take care of their home, how are you expected to lead anybody outside of that? Those are supposed to be the most important people in your life. You can't take care of that, so how are you going to take care of this business? How are you going to take care of these other important relationships? And sure, those people might be successful for a time, but they're not going to have long-term success. And for me, just finding that balance is very difficult. I think life is all about balance, right? It's all about constantly creating, you're spinning plates and one plate is about to fall and you got to invest some more time there. And then the other plates start to fall and you got to invest some time there. We live in a world that says we got to do a ton of stuff. Like we always have to be busy. We just have to be on every social network. We have to constantly be reading and growing and doing and showing the world that we're doing all those things because they need to know. And so it is a very difficult time. In my opinion, if I had to break it down to one word, actually I'll break it down to 2 words. It's priorities and discipline. And discipline for me has always been doing something you don't necessarily like to achieve something you love. And that's something that I've really held on to, is that I don't like getting up early in the morning. I'm not really a morning person. I'm actually a really good night owl, but my life at this season just doesn't allow that. So I get up early and I read and I get like yard work done in the morning and I spend quiet time just kind of having that self time. And I have times with my kids. I get to make them breakfast every morning and spend time with them. And then, the idea of priorities. If you don't believe your family's more important than your work, then it'll show in your actions. It's just really sad to me when I see people that just are relationally bankrupt, but financially wealthy. And so I thought, man, what a life that I don't want. And that's most of these kind of up and coming hustling millennial type entrepreneurs that like brag about how many hours they work. I worked 85 hours last week. And I'm like, you're an idiot. Like this is.
How's your back? How's your mind feeling?
Well, yeah. Well, I just look at that and I go, an entrepreneur is someone who learns how to make more money with less time. So if you're like, you make $100,000 a year and you work 80 hours a week, you have two $50,000 jobs is what you have. And so I just look at that and I go, okay, if you could make $100,000 a year and you work 5 hours a week, that's impressive, right? We don't start businesses so that we can work more. We start businesses so that we could work less and so we can have more time to do those things that we do love with the people that we do love. And so I'm just constantly helping people get those priorities straight and realize like what entrepreneurship really is. It's not about working a ton and working late into the night and like, cool, like that happens every now and then. But if that's your life, you're not an entrepreneur, you're an employee at your own company.
You're really making me think, and Kamla, I know you you probably feel the same way. As Dale talks, I'm thinking a lot about our interview with Jay Papasan and how Jay talked about the one thing and boiling our life down in each category to the one thing where we get the most success. And out of everything he said, when he did his research and everything he was doing, he's like, we're boiling everything down to simplicity so that we can create more time for family and for being around the people that we love. And just to add to that on a deeper level, personal level, Kamla and I just recently took a trip down to Medellin, Colombia. I was adopted when I was 8 years old. Some of you thriving launchers know this, that I was adopted and I went back and reunited with my family and met my father who I'd never met. And I just spent nearly 2 months not really working and being engrossed in Latin family. And Latin culture is very about family, gatherings of 30, 40 people on a regular basis, not once a year, but a few times a month.
Every single day, it seems like.
And I feel so much better. I feel so much more loved and whole. And this is what I do business for. This is what I do mindfulness practices for. This is what I do everything for, so I can feel more at peace and, in a sense, feel like all of me is being maximized.
Totally. I mean, I think these kind of things are just, it sounded like a season where you go, man, am I recalibrating how I view success? And one of my big goals is that, man, if I could make whatever number it is, right, that is a comfortable income for me, and I'm not talking millions of dollars, I'm talking, a few $100,000 a year, but I could have all the time in the world, like that is incredible, right? And so many times I see entrepreneurs, they go, oh my gosh, I want to build like this multi-million-dollar business. And I'm like all about it, like do it, right? That's the best part about entrepreneurship and capitalism, right? But I go, $1 million a year is a lot of money. It's like to remind people that, like, that's a lot of money. And there comes a point, at least in my experience, where when I made $1 million, I thought, like, I'm not really motivated to make any more. At that point, your priorities will really get there. You go, if you're performance driven and you just want to show off more things to more people and you got to have like the nicer thing, like I just question where your heart is, right? And where your motives are and the need to make so much. Right now, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, and some companies need to be big, but just like being content in that journey is another process and another personal maturity that I think comes along as an entrepreneur, especially in the later years as you start to actually make money and be successful. So anyways, yeah, I like the journey. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with this. I mean, when I started off online and I decided to take my business online, it was because I wanted the lifestyle. I love to travel. I love to be able to work my own hours and work as much as I felt like. And I just want to be completely honest and transparent that I did put in some 80-hour weeks. I did work really, really hard in the beginning. And now our business is at a place that we can take 2 months off and we're working 5 hours a week and our business is doing better than it's ever done. And I think that it can take some time to get there, but the important thing that I hear you driving home is what's the motivation behind it? Is it really about the money, or is it about being able to live the way that you want to live and embody a sense of peace or a sense of happiness and have the time that you want to have for the things that are really important to you?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, and for us, it was to live on a farm, right? So we live on a farm in the middle of Oregon, and that was kind of our dream. And that's how we wanted to have that home base. And we wanted the peace, and we wanted the quiet, and we wanted the animals, we wanted the big yard, and we wanted those things. And to be honest, it's cheaper than where I came from in Southern California. And so for us, yeah, my wife and I, we just make decisions based off of Like, what's the dream? Like, what do we really want? And what's next, right? We don't constantly just end on one dream and go like, this is our forever home. And like, this is it. And this is, we stay for a season, right? For sure. We're excited to be in the season that we're at now. One of my favorite quotes is, you're not incontent if you want change. You're incontent if you can't be happy while you wait for that change. And that process for us has been a journey. For us, we want change. We don't know what that is right now. We've been here for a few years. We plan on hoping to be here for, I don't know, another 3 or 4 or 5 years, who knows? But the idea is that we want change. And I think that's important to give permission to people to have that change, like to desire it. Even when you get to the top of that mountain, like don't just sit there, enjoy it for a season. And then figure out what's next. Like, what else are you going to build? What else are you going to do? What else can you add? And we got work to do. We're entrepreneurs. We're creators, right? So I'm just really excited for what's next. But at the same time, I'm really happy with where I'm at. And it took me a long time to get that idea where I was constantly always in, I was always 10 steps ahead, even where I was standing. And I was never happy with where I was at. And that's, I think, another thing that performance addiction comes with as an entrepreneur. We have a lot of these people that are broken and trying to prove themselves and get to be valuable, or to be, just to kind of get that affirmation that they desperately need to say that they're worthy. And a lot of those people get that from whatever brokenness of their past, but they try to show it through their work. Oh, look how great I am. Look how famous I am. Look how smart I am. Look how wealthy I am. And I've been there. That's the reason I can talk about that, right? Like, that's the journey. It's one of the biggest drivers out there. But I think as we mature and as we grow and as we realize, like, that's not really stuff that matters. And that's my own brokenness. And I need to be healed from that. And I need to take time to look into that. And I need to maybe get right with God, or I need to have a serious conversation with my wife or my spouse. Those kind of things, I think, we avoid talking about and we avoid doing. But I'm telling you, man, when you are broken inside, you're only as successful as you are healed. And so my big thing is, man, if you got something going on, you haven't talked about it, you're so independent. You have a spirit of independence that's so strong that you can't keep a relationship, whether that's an intimate relationship or a friendship. You're always 10 feet wide and 1 inch deep. If that's you, I mean, you're going to hit a wall. Eventually, you got to like break that down and really allow yourself to really open up and create that success story from the maturity that comes with growing up.
Dale, I taught the work of Dr. John and Julie Gottman for several years, and they're some of the most renowned marriage researchers on the planet. And I taught their work to over 300 married couples for several years. And one of the things that they found in their research, and a lot of research has now backed this up and shown this to be true, is that people who are happy at home report being happier at work, and people who are not happy at home report being less satisfied at work. But the inverse doesn't work. People who say they're happy at work don't certainly report that they're happy at home. Like, liking your job won't certainly impact how you are at home. And yet, if you're happier at home, you will directly be impacted at work, and it will make you happier. It will add to it. As you're talking, I can't help but wonder, did something happen? Was there a moment where maybe you were just working too much? Because to get to where you're at, Dale, is uncommon for people unless they've had some kind of breaking point. The people that go back and focus on the home, something happened to them. For my own personal experience of being adopted and then going back and reuniting with my family and going through that whole journey, that journey happened because there was something inside of me that I knew that needed to be healed. And to add to that too, I feel like the better my relationship with Kamala gets and the more that we work on things and I become a better partner for her, the more that I actually become a better business person, the better I become in all aspects of my life. Did something happen in particular for you?
Yeah, I think so. I've had a few moments of trauma in terms of like self-inflicted trauma, and moments where it's just like you look yourself in the mirror and you're like, I hate who I am. And so I've had a few of those over the last 12 or 15 years. And I think that it wasn't until a few years ago, I'm a spiritual guy, right? So I talk a lot about kind of Christianity and the faith. I'm a little bit different in terms of the very common conversation on that stuff. I started really just taking a lot of the principles that I was reading in the scriptures literally. And it took me through that process to realize that I had to let something have authority over me. I struggled. I was a liar. Like, in my younger years, like I lied all the time, right? And that was one of those things that I actually tied so much success to lying. Now, it's not like blatant lies, but I'm talking like, you would say things like, you stretch the truth or you exaggerate, right? Or it's a white lie or whatever that might be, right? And what happens is those negative behaviors, we tie our success. So if you find somebody that's really successful and they also have some negative characteristics, they cheat, they lie, they manipulate or whatever it is, they tied all those characteristics to their success. They're like, man, I'm successful because of those things. Well, getting rid of that was a really hard journey over the last several years. And just in terms of just allowing God to have authority in my life to go like, I'm not going to do that. I actually fear God and I'm not going to do that because of that reason. When that happened, it was a game changer in terms of how I started behaving and how I actually acted with integrity. And I actually went back and apologized to a lot of people, and including my wife and just a lot of people that just needed to hear that from me. So there was that moment in terms of just the kind of literal look at something and having authority over my life. And then I've had a couple businesses that have done really well and a couple that have failed. And I've had the crying moments with my spouse in terms of, she doesn't feel loved. And I've had the wonderful friends that are willing to come up to me and tell me the truth and that would have the bravery and the courage to say, dude, Dale, you got a booger on your face, right? Like you got to get rid of that thing, And so I just wasn't interested any longer with friends that just wouldn't do that to me. I gave everybody, safe people permission to do that. And so I think through a variety of those instances, every few years, I was just kind of having this like, boom, just like breakthrough, like boom, break through another wall. And it became a little addicting. So I've just tried to kind of center myself around that, around really great families and really great men and women who reminded me what normal is. And I'll tell you what's common. It's common for the entrepreneur to work himself out of his marriage or her marriage, right? It's common for those things to happen. It's not normal. Okay, that's not normal. It's normal to be able to balance your work life with your home life and to have a great relationship with your spouse and your children and have a great relationship at work. Okay, it's common to have a workplace affair, right? But it's not normal, right? It's common. I always say this about parenting, right? It's common for a 16-year-old girl to sneak out and go out with her boyfriend and smoke cigarettes and maybe even have sex. That's common. It's not normal though, right? Like, as parents, it's normal that your 16-year-old daughter respects you and loves you enough to say like, hey, like have this conversation with you and obey the rules of the home. And that's normal, right? So I'm constantly trying to remember what normal is. And we live in a world that's changing that all the time. And so I'm trying to kind of just define what's normal and look at that and go, okay, like this is normal. I need to remember this because the world won't tell me otherwise. It'll tell me the opposite or it'll tell me something different.
That's what I was just thinking is, wait, normal is something we really want to, in some degrees, define ourselves or know what that is for us, because the world is telling us it's normal to be jacked up on medications and caffeine and just a very different type of lifestyle that doesn't feel very good to me is what society and mass media wants to tell us is normal.
Yeah, and we just have to come to our own realization of, and again, for me, I just take like what I believe in terms of the Bible and I go, that's my normal, right? And I have to go to that. Whatever it is for you, I don't care whatever it is. You just need to define that normal and not let it change, right? Because when it changes, that becomes a very weird thing, right? For your business, for your, if it's not normal for me to get a divorce, right? That's just not okay. And so if that ever changes in my kind of moral code, I mean, that's a big deal, right? And you're kind of a moving target for what's okay and not okay. So yeah, I think that moral relativism, right, is what the word is for that conversation. It's like, oh, like what's good for me is good, even if it's bad for you, right? So I think that's like the deeper conversation as entrepreneurs, as leaders. Like an entrepreneur without a moral code and who's just like, this is good one day and not good the next, and that's good the next day and that's not good the next, like that's a very dangerous spot for a leader because they're leading people down their road. And so for me, I just try to be very steady, right? I try to be very reliable. I try to be the same as much as I possibly can. I try to be very normal and I try to be clear about what that is. And I think when that happens, people go, oh, like, some crazy event in the world happens. Dale, what do you think about that? Hey, I'm confused and I need clarity on that. What do you think about that? Can I follow you there? And we look for that kind of stuff in the leaders that we follow to create that have that clarity and that have that confidence and have that kind of firm stance on something.
We've been listening to Dale Partridge really redefining success and leadership.
And before we go, Dale, great point about being a safe harbor and being something that's stable that people can look to and find stability. I think that's really beautiful and a huge encouragement for everyone as we're all increasing our levels of success or going after success in whatever way that is for us, to still remember some of the foundational keys of who we are and what makes us true for ourselves. Kamala, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on the show, Dale. It's been fantastic to have you here. We're going to make sure to link people to your podcast so they can keep listening to you and your message and your steady leadership, and as well as other resources that we've talked about in the episode. All that will be at thrivinglaunch.com. Thank you so much for tuning in, and stay tuned for tomorrow. You've been listening to the Thriving Launch podcast. For books and resources related to today's episode, make sure to head over to thrivinglaunch.com. We'll see you there.
Make sure to tune into our next episode with Don Miguel Ruiz. If you want to know more about love and what it takes to have an open heart in all of your relationships, tune into our next episode.